This is episode 5 of my Baldurs Gate Mage Build guide. In this video, we're going to focus on getting through level 1 as fast as we can, using a few tactics. As a mage, we might only have a couple of spells during a fight, before you then have to resort to using slings or darts, or even running up with a quarterstaff. So it's likely you might get very frustrated by tougher opponents before you manage to level up. All the spells I recommended in my last video are consistent against weaker enemies, but because this is a D&D game, when you encounter tougher opponents, the dice rolls to succeed will be tougher, and therefore the results are going to be less reliable. The game will attempt to lead you to Nashkel, where you can find some very useful armour hidden away. If you've got a tank or a fighter, try looking in a field to the west of Nashkel. From here, you can pick up a useful suit of Ankeg armour. After this, you'll likely be directed to Nashkel Mines or the Null Stronghold, both of which are designed to be manageable quests at level 1. If you decide to go straight for the Nashkel Mines, then Mullahay will be the first boss you fight. The mine itself is full of kobolds, which aren't particularly tough. Mullahay will be the main challenge. First, I recommend on taking the wand from the tree outside the mines as a backup if the fight doesn't really go your way. It's very useful for doing damage, but beware that if the person freezes, you might end up losing their items. A few extra scrolls can be bought from High Hedge or picked up as additional prep before going into the mines. Secondly, I recommend saving your spells for the boss as you go through this dungeon, because resting here will be very risky. Using your mage might also depend on the team you have around them. I like to make sure I've got a couple of fighters to lead with, a cleric or druid to cast supporting spells, and 2 mages to double the chance of getting off some successful spells. Next, I'm going to show you a battle against Mullahay, in which I got quite lucky, but I had a number of strategies lined up for him. First of all, we took care of the kobolds as we entered the last part of the dungeon. I tried to position my mages away from where I knew Mullahay was going to summon more enemies. I actually didn't position them very well, or my fighters, but I got away with it as they were all close enough to move around and get into the fight. Jaheira casts Entangle at the start of the fight behind us to try to stop the enemies coming in to join the fight, though this is of minimal success. Minsk uses his Berserk ability to try to prevent him being taken out of the fight by some sort of spell like Fear or Panic, and to boost his strength during the fight. Jaheira also casts Bless, which improves our attack and damage rolls. I then stalled for as much time as possible before starting the fight by pretending to be in league with Tazak. I got Nira, my second mage, to cast Blindness, in the hope of stopping Mullahay from casting spells or attacking us. I also had another one of these ready on my main character. This ended up being successful and disabled him during the fight. Nira then cast a quick magic missile as a backup to do some damage, but mostly to interrupt his spell casting, as it's one of the fastest spells in the game, and I didn't know yet if the blindness spell had worked. My mage cast Sleep to reduce the effectiveness of the enemies, which worked on the kobolds, but the skeletons were immune to sleep, so they continued to fight. Mince then gets a critical hit on Mullahay, doing 38 damage and killing him. This is a combination of his Berserk status giving a strength bonus, and the Bless spell improving his attack rolls, whilst Mullahay is also likely to have a -4 to his armor class after being blinded. This is a side effect of the spell, which is really useful in this attack. Had this not happened, I was about to use the Wand of Frost to damage Mullahay and more quickly wear him down. I was quite lucky, but any of my spells could have failed, and I would have still had many strategies ready as a backup, just to stay in the fight for longer and try a few more ways of causing damage or mayhem. For example, I had a horror scroll ready to try and reduce the number of the enemies in the fight. I then cast Blindness on a skeleton, although I was quite unsure whether it was effective against skeletons. In the end it was successful, and this helped us to slowly mop up the rest of the enemies. After the fight was over, Minsk then was still in in berserk mode. So he began to attack anyone near him. So to limit the damage, I used my final blindness spell on him and waited for him to calm down. I also had a couple of crushing weapons ready. My original plan was to kill Mullahay with the Wand of Frost, then with my fighters, and then my mages to disable everybody they could with spells. Following taking him out of the fight, I thought I would have to switch to the crushing weapons in order to deal with the skeletons. These crushing weapons actually end up being quite useful after this part of the fight, as there are some jellies to block the exit of the next room. So if you prepare well, then this dungeon should be very manageable at level 1, but I recommend that you prepare multiple spells and backup strategies and use your team efficiently in order to take Mullahay out as quickly as you can. After this quest, you'll likely still need to level up your party. In my case, I was still a level 1 mage. I therefore have to mention a few areas of the game. Obviously you could go to the Knoll Stronghold to get a little bit more experience, but one of the most well-known areas in the game for gaining XP is the area east of Temple near Baragost. If you go to Temple and then continue to move east, being very careful not to encounter large groups of wolves, you can make it to another area to the east, and it's here that you can kill a number of basilisks and get a huge amount of XP for each one. You need to prepare well if you're going to do this. I recommend at least 1 or 2 people that have protection from petrification. This spell could be bought from High Hedge. I also recommend you enlist the help of Korax when you get there, as he's going to help you attack without being immobilized and turned to stone. Just watch out for a mage who could be quite tricky, and a group of very tough fighters and clerics that you might not want to fight at this level. In the next video we're going to return to look at higher level spells now that you can easily get to level 2, and how best to use those spells and combinations.
Away with you!